Look, guilty as charged. It's great fun to scour social media for apparent leaks and hot tips on what we might get to see in new films. And even if it all turns out to be a big old load of baloney, it can be a blast to consider the what-ifs when they aren't, like, egregious nonsense. And 2024 was no exception. So, with that said, I am your designated egregious nonsense purveyor, Ewan Patterson. This is What Culture, and with major spoilers ahead, here are 10 recent movie rumors that were total bull. Number 10. Robert Downey Jr. has a cameo. Deadpool and Wolverine. Rumors swirled in the months leading up to Deadpool and Wolverine's release that the film would feature a cameo from Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, and if any film could bring the actor back for a cute, possibly meta cameo that didn't undermine the character's demise in Avengers Endgame, well, surely it'd be this one. Right? And so, it was easy to believe that Marvel Studios had dumped a truck full of cash on RDJ's lawn and secured his services for a brief appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. Early in the film, we do see Deadpool with Happy Hogan in 2018, where he pitches joining the Avengers, only to be understandably turned down. Tony Stark, who obviously was very much alive at this point in time, is nowhere to be seen. Though, according to the film's co-writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the original version of the script did indeed have Tony in the office with Happy. But Downey ultimately turned the cameo offer down, which Reese and Wernick surmise was likely because he was already locked in to play Doctor Doom in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday, which is a whole thing. Oh. Number 9. The book was written by Taylor Swift? Argyle. Beyond all the fussing over who exactly is Agent Argyle in Matthew Vaughn's spy romp Argyle, there was a deeply bizarre rumor that the novel from which the screenplay was apparently adapted was penned by Taylor Swift. It all started when the as-yet unreleased Argyle novel was said to be written by Ellie Conway, a person with no online presence, prompting many to assume that it was a pseudonym for the real author, who was played in the film by Bryce Dallas Howard. And because Taylor Swift fans found some circumstantial links between the singer and Conway, such as them both owning a Scottish fold, the rumor snowballed that the jet-fueled chugging superstar was indeed the author of the Argyle novel, which predictably turned out to be total nonsense. Number 8. Kate is Joe's daughter. Twisters. When a sequel to Twister was first announced, it was simply assumed that Helen Hunt, who played protagonist Joe Harding in the original film directed by Jan de Bont, would appear in a supporting capacity, because that's what legacy sequels almost always do. And even though Hunt didn't appear in any of Twister's marketing, many fans nevertheless remained convinced that she'd show up for a scene or two, likely as the mother of new protagonist Kate, played by Daisy Edgar Jones, who is effectively her younger equivalent in this film. But Joe is nowhere to be seen, and no direct mention is made of either her or her husband Bill, who was of course played by the late, great, and sorely missed Bill Paxton in the original Twisters, which honestly is probably for the best. Curiously though, Universal did originally want Hunt to appear in the film as the mother of the female lead, yet it never came to pass. Possibly because the studio previously turned down Hunt's offer to write and direct a different version of the film. Given that Kate's mother, Kathy, played by Maura Tierney, has a fairly substantial role in the middle of Twisters, it's easy to assume that this was originally written for Hunt's Joe, but for now, there's no way of knowing for certain. Number 7. Maxine becomes the Nightstalker. Maxine. An extremely tantalizing rumor was doing the rounds in the months leading up to the release of Ty West's trilogy-capping horror Maxine, that West was gonna pull a Quentin Tarantino and serve up some grisly revisionist history. Given that the marketing played up the presence of real-life serial killer the Nightstalker, many came to believe that the big twist would see Mia Goth's Maxine Minx herself become the Nightstalker, all while pinning the killings on the man who committed them in real life. who was, of course, Richard Ramirez. But the Nightstalker is ultimately something of a red herring throughout the movie, his role proving totally incidental as Maxine finds herself fending off a murderer who happens to be somebody else entirely. Considering how disappointed many were with Maxine's third act in particular, this might, and I do stress the word might here given the icky connotations of rewriting history when it comes to an actual serial killer, have been a more interesting direction to go. Number 6. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man will appear, Madam Web. Now, in fairness, anyone who seriously expected this to happen was mainlining uncut optimism. But all the same, the rumor that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man would appear in Madam Web did get some decent traction online, and God bless you all for going along with that. Given that Madam Web is set in 2003, great year, by the way, at least for popular culture when you're 7 years old, because the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon came out then and that thing was awesome, and The Amazing Spider-Man happening an entire decade later, it certainly didn't seem like a probable event, short of a time jump in the closing stages of the third act, or more likely, multiversal shenanigans compressing time somehow. Anyway, given the rather, well, shall we say, rickety state of Sony's Marvel movies, it must have been the easiest choice in the world for Garfield to give Madam Web a wide berth, even if he had been offered a role. Either way, I see a lot online from people asking for Garfield to come back as Spidey, but I've got to admit, I'm not really that bothered. I don't know, let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments below. Would bringing Garfield back rescue Sony's villain spin-off universe, or would it come off as desperate? Let me know, webheads, and also Garfield fans. Not the actor, but the cat, because that would also be good, I imagine. Number 5. Cooper's daughter is the real butcher, Trap. The moment that the first trailer for M. Night Shyamalan's recent thriller Trap dropped, fans began speculating on what that plot twist might be, because this being a Shyamalan film, of course there had to be a twist. By far the most popular theory was that the trailer was basically a bait and switch, and that protagonist Cooper, played by a resurgent Josh Hartnett, wasn't the serial killer known as the Butcher at all. Rather, the Butcher was actually his daughter Riley, played by Ariel Donahue. Because doesn't that sound exactly like the kind of crazy rug pull Shyamalan would try and execute? And yet, this ultimately isn't the case at all. Cooper is indeed the Butcher, and the movie focuses largely on his attempts to escape the sting set for him at Lady Raven's concert. Better still, Trap doesn't really feature much of a conventional twist at all. What you see is pretty much what you get, which is somewhat refreshing for a Shyamalan joint. Number 4. Black Manta kills Aquaman's baby, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Okay, so here's a really wild one. Prior to the release of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, word swirled online that James Wan's superhero sequel would recreate one of Aquaman's most infamous comic book moments. That's right, the death of Aquababy, because superhero comics wouldn't be superhero comics without the tonal whiplash of a traumatic event happening to a character with a hilarious name. R.I.P. Aquababy, you would have loved the Boss Baby for sure. And yeah, even accepting the moment's foundational basis in Aquaman's source material, it certainly felt like a bridge too far for a PG-13 superhero movie. And yet, online talk and chatter was persistent in suggesting we get to see this shocking twist on screen. Which leads me to ask, Aquaman fans, are you all okay? Do we need to wean you off the Aquababy conversations with some light Robin bludgeoning or something? I don't know. Now, in their defense, the trailers showed that Arthur did have a son, and the DCEU had gone into grim territory before, so it wasn't entirely out of the question? Ultimately, it was bunk. Though there are those who maintain that Manta was originally meant to kill Arthur's progeny, given how noticeably choppy the sequence is where Manta kidnaps him instead. It's entirely possible that murder was initially on the menu then, but was changed in post-production. Either way, goddamn it, Aquaman, why? Number 3. The post-credits scene teases Handsome Jack, Borderlands. Even though it was made abundantly clear before Borderlands release that the game series' legendary villain Handsome Jack wouldn't be appearing, apparently a decision made before director Eli Roth came aboard, it seemed entirely plausible that Jack might make his first appearance in the film's post-credit scenes. This theory was lent credence by Randy Pitchford, CEO of Borderlands developer Gearbox Software, who in 2021 tweeted confirming the possibility of a credit stinger featuring Handsome Jack. And yet, those unfortunate to have watched the movie and then had the resolve left in them to stay past the credits will know that the movie comes and goes without any substantial hint of what's to come. Not even the faintest tease of Handsome Jack's potential presence in a sequel, which we know obviously is not going to get made, given that the whole original film only got like $30 million at the box office, which is just... Ooh, you doing okay there, Lionsgate, because that's gotta sting. Number 2, Kaylee Spaney is playing Amanda Ripley, Alien Romulus. With Alien Romulus being set between Alien and Aliens, and starring the somewhat Sigourney Weaver-esque Kaylee Spaney, it was inevitable that fans would soon enough theorize that she was, in fact, playing Ripley's daughter, Amanda. After all, what does Hollywood love more than riding the coattails of legacy protagonists by introducing their offspring in a new movie? But at least in the case of Alien, Amanda was first introduced way back in Aliens and served as the protagonist of the hit video game Alien Isolation, which you all gotta play if you haven't already, because that game absolutely owns. Thankfully though, Alien Romulus is a mostly self-contained story, with Spaney's protagonist Rain Carradine indeed being a totally new original character, an orphaned miner who desperately wants to get out from under Weyland-Yutani's boot heel. Given that making Romulus's protagonist Amanda Ripley would have been the most predictably lazy, cynical thing the studio could have insisted upon, it was genuinely refreshing that the movie didn't go this way, no matter its other copious fan service related flaws being really irritating. And number 1, the original quartet will return, Mean Girls. The new Mean Girls movie was adapted from the 2017 musical based on the original 2004 Tina Fey penned comedy, and it was basically expected that the musical would feature cameos from the 4 original leads, those of course being Lindsay Lohan, Rachel McAdams, Lacey Chabert, and Amanda Seyfried, in a sort of passing of the torch moment. But the rumors turned out to be complete baloney. Well, to be completely fair, they were about 75% nonsense and not 100%. As it turns out, Lohan does make a surprise appearance in the 3rd act as the moderator of the Mathletes tournament, but anyone hoping to see the original quartet reunited in what would be the equivalent of the Avengers Endgame portal scene for theater kids was left sorely wanting. McAdams did reveal in a Variety interview shortly before the film's release, however, that Tina Fey did try to include her in the film, but it ultimately didn't work out. For Fey's part, she said she couldn't fit all 4 original ladies in the new movie, and felt that Lohan, being the star of the 2004 film, was the best choice. Can't blame the logic there, even if it would have been fun to see them all back for a brief moment. Logic be damned.